All right, we are back. Reason and Theology, your host, Michael Lofton, aka Don Lofton, aka he who makes them an offer of nuance that they can't refuse. We're going to talk today about a number of things. First, let me remind you earlier today, this morning, I did an interview with Justin Brierley, the one and only from Premiere Unbelievable legend, who has interviewed some of the most incredible minds of this century and hosted some of the most amazing discussions. So go and watch that video if you haven't already. Now, what I want to do with this live stream is I want to talk about the College of Cardinals. We're not going to take a deep dive into, the top 10 contenders right now. That's going to be a later stream, but we're going to talk about the College of Cardinals electing the next pope and what they're probably going to be looking for. I did do a show on whether or not Cardinal Sarah would be a contender. I also looked at the question of Cardinal Pizzaballa, but we are getting a little bit more insight into what the Cardinals are likely going to be going for based on some news that just came out. I want to cover that and then offer my thoughts on it because I see that some people are talking about it, but I don't know if they're taking all of the facts into consideration. Namely, some of the Cardinals are calling for a continuation of Pope Francis's papacy. They want to see the trajectory that Pope Francis had with his pontificate. They want to see that continued. They want to see that perpetuated rather than reversed. Whereas other people online, some Catholics are very dissatisfied with the previous pontificate and we're hoping for a reversal. So that's what we need to talk about today. Is there going to be a reversal of Pope Francis's pontificate, or will it be a continuation of the previous pontificate? Now, I want to remind you before we dive in any further, you need to hit that subscribe button. Go ahead and hit it for me. Hit the like button too. Really would appreciate your support for the channel. So, Cardinal is calling for a continuation of Pope Francis's reform path. That is the headline that I'm looking at here from Catholic News Agency. I'll pull it up and show it to you on my screen so you can follow along. It's a very short article. Should be able to see it right around now. Discern and order. Cardinal Reina is calling for a continuation of this pontificate, or the previous pontificate. He urged the faithful to discern and order the late pontiff's reform initiatives while acknowledging the sense of loss felt by Rome's Catholics in his homily on the third day of the Novendiales Masses for Pope Francis. Speaking at St. Peter's Basilica on Monday, April 28th, the 54-year-old Vicar General for the Diocese of Rome described how the faithful feel like sheep without a shepherd following the pontiff's death. Now, in fairness, a lot of Catholics felt like they were sheep without a shepherd when Pope Francis was alive. A lot of people felt that way. But he's talking about the situation where right now, interregnum, sed vacante, there is no pope, so they feel like a sheep without a shepherd. I think of the multiple reform processes of church life initiated by Pope Francis, which extend beyond religious affiliations. People recognize him as a universal pastor, Reina said. These people carry concern in their hearts, and I seem to discern in them a question: what will become of the process that have begun? The Italian cardinal who will vote in the conclave scheduled to begin May 7th. May 7th. That is when they are going to vote for the next pope. I will be covering that situation here live. We'll see if they successfully elect the pope. If not, they'll take a break and go back into conclave. I'm going to cover all of that. So if you want to be in tune with that situation and you want good commentary, hit that subscribe button right now. May 7th. Well, he says that true fidelity requires continuing the path set by Pope Francis rather than retreating from it. Some people want to retreat from the path that Pope Francis laid out. Not only Pope Francis, but Benedict. Not only Benedict, but John Paul II. Not only John Paul II, but Paul VI. Not only Paul VI, but John the 23rd. as well as Vatican II. A lot of people want to reverse that. They just feel like this post-conciliar period has been one big nightmare and need to hit that reset button. And so a lot of people are going to say, don't just hit the reset button on Pope Francis, hit the reset button on the whole thing. Others are going to say, no, 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 no. We love Vatican II. We love the post-conciliar popes. This is a great thing. And then you have people somewhere in between. So there's certainly different perspectives here. But he's saying the Cardinals need to continue the agenda and the process of reform outlined by Pope Francis. He says our duty must be to discern and order what has begun in light of what our mission demands us, moving toward a new heaven and a new earth, adorning the bride of the church for the bridegroom. Drawing on the Gospel of John, Reina reflected on the parable of the grain of wheat that must die to bear fruit, comparing it to Christians becoming seeds willing to be spent for new life. He warned against responding to current challenges with fear or worldly compromise. This cannot be the time for balancing acts, tactics, caution, instincts to turn back, or worse, revenge and power alliances. But rather, we need a radical disposition to enter into God's dream entrusted to our poor hands. He concluded his homily with a tribute to Pope Francis. In closing, the cardinal invoked the Virgin Mary, venerated in Rome as Salus Populi Romani, to accompany and protect the church. So, you can see he's calling for a continuation, right? And I think the majority of the College of Cardinals who are going to be electing the next pope, they will also want to see a continuation to one degree or another of the previous pontificate. Maybe not fully a continuation, but to one degree or another, they're going to want to see a continuation. Very few of them are going to want to see a reversal. For better or worse, whether you like that or not, whether you think that's the best thing or not, it doesn't matter what you think. Doesn't matter what I think. It matters what the Cardinals who are going to be electing him would think. Crash says, would Pope Michael allow the TLM and the Novus Ordo? Doesn't matter what I would think. It does not matter. Doesn't matter what I think, what you think. Doesn't matter. What do the men who are going to elect him think? And it's certainly the case that the majority of them are not going to want to see a full-blown reversal of Pope Francis's pontificate. They may want to pump the brakes a little. Others are going to want to say, press on the gas more. But you're not going to have most of them wanting, certainly not 2/3 of them, which is what you need to elect a pope, right? You will not have 2/3 of them wanting to see a reversal. Whether you like that or not, whether you agree with that or not, whether you want to see that or not, that's the reality. But let's entertain this for a moment. And I know I did this on a previous stream, but some people may not have seen it. Let's entertain this for a moment. Let's go ahead and go with, okay, let's say that, out of some wild, odd chance, they actually go for a pontificate that reverses, Pope Francis's papacy and what he did. How would that play out? First of all, practically, how is that going to work with the non-Catholics? Aren't the Protestants and the Orthodox and everybody else going to say, see, the papacy is not stable. See, they're reversing what they did previously. See, your James Whites of the world will be like, you see, one day they tell you this, the next day they tell you that. Certainly this will play into the critics' hands, right? But more fundamentally, when you did have cases where a pope reversed the acts of his predecessor, how did that work out for the Catholic Church? Did it work out well? Or was it a nightmare? I can give you a lot of examples. The one that I've pointed out multiple times, I got a whole stream on it, is the Cadaver Synod, where one pope digs up the grave and bones of his predecessor, drags his skeleton out, puts the skeleton pope on trial, has a deacon speak on his behalf, because obviously a skeleton can't speak in his own defense. So the deacon spoke on his behalf, put him up on trial, and of course the skeleton pope lost. Of course he was convicted by the living pope, found guilty. And then the pope reversed all of the acts of his predecessor, of the dead pope. Not only reversed his acts, but reversed his ordinations and said his ordinations weren't valid, which causes a massive problem with the Catholic notion that the sacramental character is an indelible mark, putting that issue to the side. He said all the people he ordained aren't validly ordained and they need to get reordained. And all of his acts are invalid and we're reversing them. How did that work out well? Was that effective for the Catholic Church? Did that work out? Well, you know the story, right? So the next pope after that pope reversed the stuff that his predecessor did and restored the stuff that his predecessor put into place. And he said, fine, those original ordinations, those are actually valid. And everything the successor did was invalid. And his ordinations need to be redone. And we're restoring the acts of the first pope, the skeleton pope. Story didn't end there. A fourth pope comes along. When the third pope died, fourth pope comes along. What does he do? You know what? We're reversing a reversal of the reversal. And we're going back with what the second pope did when he reversed the first one. And we're going to say that all of the acts of the previous pope are invalid. The acts of the second pope are valid. The acts of the first pope are invalid. All the ordinations of the previous pope are invalid, and we need to redo those. And the ordinations of the first pope are valid, and they don't have to be redone. It was an absolute nightmare. And I'll point out that on the books, the decision that they ended up with is a decision that is contrary to what the Catholic Church teaches on the sacramental character of ordinations. And it also just doesn't make a whole lot of sense when you just look at the situation. But it's like at that point, the popes just said, all right, look, let's just go ahead and end this here and pretend this never happened. And that's why you probably have never heard of it, because the papacy has just said, all right, we're just going to forget this ever happened. And we're just not going to talk about it anymore. The cadaver synod. How did that work out? Did that work out well for the Catholic Church? No, of course not. What about the situation where Leo II at the Sixth Ecumenical Council condemned his predecessor, Pope Honorius, for heresy? That didn't work out well because, first of all, it makes the council look like they're contradicting themselves. Because several sessions prior, that same council that condemned Pope Honorius as teaching heresy was the same council said that all the predecessors of Pope Agatho, which includes Honorius, were free from error in their teaching authority and were infallible in their teaching authority. And yet that same council, several sessions later, says that Honorius actually taught heresy. And it's not that Leo II just said, well, no, he was negligent. Some people try to read Leo II that way. Fair enough, but you have a deeper problem with Hadrian II at the Eighth Ecumenical Council in 869 to 870, who, going back to that case of Honorius, says that Honorius taught heresy. Not that he was just negligent, but that he taught heresy. So when you have popes judging their predecessor popes, accusing them of heresy, first of all, was Honorius actually teaching heresy? No. So we know that the judgment of Leo II and Adrian in the Eighth Ecumenical Council and the Sixth Ecumenical Council were factually wrong. We already know that. That's not controversial. Every historian, every Catholic theologian and historian, they already know that. They already know that the popes and the councils made a mistake on Honorius. How did that work for the Catholic Church in condemning Pope Honorius? Well, to this day, it's something that non-Catholics use to mock Catholicism, to mock papal infallibility, and to mock the magisterium. You got Protestants to this day that will bring up Honorius, Eastern Orthodox to this day that will bring up Honorius, and they'll say, see, you just can't listen to what they say. They can't even make an accurate judgment here. Honorius tells you one thing, and then you got them telling you something else, and then you don't know if you're listening to heresy. And so Honorius tells you one thing, the council says it's heresy. So Pope Francis might have told you something one day about the death penalty. Turns out that will be heretical tomorrow. And so see how that plays into their hands? How well did that work for the Catholic Church in judging predecessors? Not very well. I can go on. We can keep playing this game all day long. The question is, has this just practically been a good endeavor for popes to judge predecessor popes and to say, I'm going to reverse their acts. How well did it work for Pope Francis to reverse Pope Benedict XVI's Summorum Pontificum and his approach to the Latin Mass? How well did that work out for Pope Francis? Didn't that cause problems to this very day? Yeah, it caused problems to this very day. So now people want to see a reversal of the reversal. How well did it work out for the Second Vatican Council to reform and perhaps even reverse some things in the Catholic Church? Some say doctrinally, others say merely disciplinary. How well did that work? Aren't there controversies to this very day? Don't people want to see a reform of the reform? They want to see a reversal of the reversal? Yeah. So when you got people out there, I saw one content creator just moments ago, or actually it was yesterday, do a show, Cardinals reversing Francis papacy, and he wants to see a pope reverse Pope Francis's papacy. But it's like, first of all, not only will that play into the hands of the critics who will just say, see, the magisterium's unreliable, but how did that work for the Catholic Church previously anyway? Whenever this happened, it never worked out well. Never. Even when popes reverse their own decisions. And yes, you have cases where popes reverse their own decisions. You got that many times, many cases. That never worked out well. It was a huge source of controversy. People are like, wait, what? You're telling us one thing today, something else the next day? And I'm not just talking about Pope Vigilius here. I give you second millennium examples too, but there's one for you, Pope Vigilius. Flip-flopping on the question of the 3 chapters, ends up getting suspended by an ecumenical council. The 5th ecumenical council suspended Pope Vigilius. Some say suspended, some say excommunicated. Either way, they sat in judgment of the Pope, whether legally or illegally they did it, because he was flip-flopping on the question of the 3 chapters. That caused massive controversy, did it not? They had to get that scrubbed from the Acts in order to continue communion between Rome and the Eastern churches. It's never worked out well. Never. So whether you want to see a reversal in a liberal trajectory, or you want to see a reversal in a traditional trajectory, I can show you cases in both instances where it's never really worked out very well. So here's what popes tend to do now. They've picked up on the fact that you can't be so conspicuous as to just outright reverse things. They've picked up on that. So what they tend to do is they silently reverse something. Not by actually saying, well, my predecessor made a mistake. Instead, they'll just basically no longer repeat what their predecessor says, and then they'll just repeat the opposite. They'll promote the opposite and ignore the fact that a predecessor said something to the contrary. That's what they tend to do these days. Pope Francis tipped his hand a little bit more with Traditionis Custodes, but Vatican II tended to kind of silently reverse some things without overtly and explicitly saying, yeah, we're going to reverse Leo the 13th and Gregory the 16th on the relation between the church and state. And it was a lot more, it wasn't as explicit. That's what they tend to do now. What you might see with a future pope is something along those lines. Maybe they'll kind of tone down the trajectory in the direction that Pope Francis brought it in, not with a full reversal, but with kind of, all right, we're just not going to perpetuate the things that Pope Francis said. We'll just kind of silently say, not say anything about that, but we'll maybe just say something that offsets it and hope the issue goes away, and only historians and theologians who know anything about the subject will remember this 100 years from now. That's more likely what will happen. However, even that I don't suspect is going to happen with the next pontificate. The next pontificate, I suspect, is going to be something in the vein of the trajectory of what Pope Francis was going for. I mean, after all, the vast majority of people who are going to elect Pope Francis's successors were appointed cardinals by Pope Francis. And they are not radicals who are going to say, we want to see a reversal of Pope Francis. They're just not. Whether you like that or not, that's the reality. So get out of fantasy land that you find on social media that makes you think you're going to get a Cardinal Syrah who's just going to reverse everything. Again, I already did a whole video on the question of Cardinal Syrah, and is it likely he's going to be elected? Get out of fantasy land. Whether he's the best person for the pontificate or not, it's not going to happen. You want to see it? The people who are voting for the next pope, they're likely not going to vote for it, and I explained why in the previous show. So get out of fantasy land, come back to reality, and face the facts that what you're probably going to have is somebody who's going to be chosen that will carry out what Pope Francis and his trajectory was. Maybe it won't be as much of a media controversy as it was with Pope Francis. Maybe he'll be a little bit better with off-the-cuff statements. Maybe he'll be a little bit better in the way he communicates things. Maybe dicastery documents will be a little better written, and will have less ambiguity in them. Maybe, but is it going to be like a full reversal of what Pope Francis said and did? No, of course not. It's not. It's just not going to be. And by the way, Pope Francis wasn't acting out of nowhere. Guess who he was building on? And all of these controversial issues, he was building on John Paul II and Benedict XVI. Whether we're talking about communion for divorce and remarried, whether we are talking about death penalty, he was building on his predecessors, whether you like it or not. He didn't come out of nowhere. This didn't happen in a vacuum. And by the way, John Paul II and Benedict were not operating in a vacuum themselves. They were partially carrying out their understanding of the Second Vatican Council, among other things. So those things didn't happen out of nowhere either. Those are my thoughts on the matter. You are welcome to disagree or agree. I'd love to hear from you. Put your thoughts there in the comment section. I will be grabbing some comments here in just a moment, but I do want to invite you to do so now. Shifting gears real quickly while y'all do that. Cardinals hold a 6th general congregation. They have confirmed 2 electors will not be at the conclave, and they also did confirm, by the way, Cardinal Becciu will not be voting in the next conclave. He withdraws his claim because Pope Francis said he could not vote, and he's not eligible for very controversial reasons that we've covered here on the channel. Go and watch the video that I did about Pope Francis being secretly recorded by a cardinal. That was Cardinal Becciu. All right, so College of Cardinals held their 6th general congregation on Tuesday morning, confirming that 2 Cardinals electors will not participate in the upcoming May 7th conclave due to health reasons. The general congregation opened with prayer at 9 a.m., following by a meditation. 183 Cardinals, including more than 120 Cardinal electors, were present at the more than 3-hour meeting held in Vatican's Synodal Hall. A total of 20 speeches were given. Following the April 29 meeting, Matteo Bruni, the director of the Holy See press office, said during an interview press briefing that the names of the 2 cardinals would not be revealed, adding that the number of cardinal electors present in Rome for the conclave may vary until the last minute and cannot yet be confirmed. I think it's somewhere like between 133 to 135, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Pope Francis was anticipating a few of those people to age out, to kind of balance it out to 120, but he passed away before that happened. During the press briefing, Bruni told journalists the main themes of the speeches delivered on Tuesday revolved around the challenges the church is facing according to the geographical perspective of the cardinals' origin. In his meditation address to the cardinals, Ogliari said the mission of the church must face numerous challenges in a time of epochal change, disrupting the world order and geopolitics and rapid technological change. In a few days' time, you will gather to choose from among yourselves the Bishop of Rome and pastor of the Universal Church. May the conclave be transformed into the upper room in which, as in a renewed Pentecost, the fire of the Holy Spirit may break in. They do invoke the Holy Spirit and the Holy Spirit's guidance in prayer during conclaves, but the Catholic Church has never taught that the Holy Spirit's will be successfully achieved at the council. People have free will, and they are able to choose against what the Holy Spirit wills. So in the Catholic understanding, some popes have been chosen that were clearly not God's will. Be that as it may, they still ask for divine guidance. Even in the place of the conclave, as the term itself says, is a locked place, it will in reality be wide open to the world if the freedom of the Spirit prevails, which, when it touches the hearts and minds, rejuvenates, purifies, recreates. The Benedictine abbot said. The Holy Spirit Press Office also released a statement on behalf of the College of Cardinals on Tuesday, in which the prelates expressed their heartfelt gratitude to all those who attended Francis's funeral. And the message, the Cardinals thanked Catholic and non-Catholic leaders and delegations, as well as representatives of Judaism, Islam, and other religions present at the late Pope's funeral. A special greeting was extended to thousands of young pilgrims who were in Rome on April 25th. The college also shared its gratitude to government and civil leaders for their solidarity. Blah, 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 blah. So they're still meeting. They have their gatherings that they've been doing. They determined again May 7th is going to be the conclave that elects Pope Francis. If they are successful in getting 2/3 from that conclave, you will know. Right after that, white smoke will come out of the chimney over there in St. Peter's Square, and you will then find out who the Pope is. Otherwise, they will take a break and reconvene in another conclave, and then attempt to elect a successor to Pope Francis. And I am going to be doing a stream here probably tomorrow on the question of the top 10 candidates for the papacy, just kind of looking at them, quick look, so you're kind of familiar. That way, whenever they choose who they choose, you'll likely know who the person is already if you watch my content. So stay tuned for that, but I need you to hit the subscribe button so you can be in tune with what I'm doing. And not only just in this case, but y'all know I do all sorts of things. I interview all kinds of people about all kinds of things. Like I said, just had Justin Brierley on this morning to talk about, why he still believes in God after hosting these discussions with Richard Dawkins and Bart Ehrman and numerous others for 20 years. Why does he still believe? So got all kinds of material about everything under the sun for you, not just news about the conclave. But there is this if you're interested in it. Either way, you need to hit that subscribe button, hit the like button. Really would appreciate it. I don't see any questions there specifically in the chat. Well, here's one. Does Michael have a video on how the Pope used to be elected before conclaves? No, I don't have a video specifically on that. What you did is you just kind of had the neighboring bishops in around the city of Rome, neighboring Rome, who would choose the Pope. So that kind of developed into the system of cardinals. So seeing if I gathered everything from the chat. Okay, is it technically possible for a pope to reverse what Pope Francis taught on the death penalty? I think the answer does make sense and ultimately doesn't contradict anything. Just curious. Okay, two things. Can he reverse the claim that the death penalty is inadmissible? Yes, he can. If the argument is that the penal system today is not going to be able to guarantee the safety of its citizens, then it's admissible. That's what Francis's argument was hanging on, is the assumption that this system today can ensure the safety of civilians in society without resorting to the death penalty. But can they reverse the claim that the death penalty is against the dignity of the human person? They cannot reverse that because that is a doctrinal claim. However, some might say it's a doctrinal claim taught non-definitively. You're going to have to then get into that debate. Okay, have the popes taught this non-definitively? If so, you would then have a doctrinal reversal of a non-definitive teaching. But I suspect that people are going to argue that this has always been against the infinite dignity of the human person. And so even if it's admissible in some cases, it still violates their infinite dignity. And some might then argue that that teaching that this would violate the infinite dignity of the human person is irreversible. So it depends on where you land on that doctrinal question. You likely won't see a pope reverse a doctrine, even if it's non-definitive. What they tend to do is they quietly just ignore their predecessor and then teach what they want to teach. They won't come out and say, well, Pope Francis said this, and so what I want to do is I want to reverse that, and now I want to say that. That's usually not how it's done. Okay, so I think I grabbed everything there from the chat. Thank you all so much for your participation there. We'll see if we can do more of these live streams for y'all, so we can have more time to answer Q&A. Hopefully daily. We'll see. All right. Hey, thank you so much for watching. Hit the subscribe button and stay tuned for much, much